My biggest fear would just be that we don't know where the best sources of information are. Even today's best sources could be so woefully out of date tomorrow. We know there are lots of sources of misinformation out there because misinformation gets eyeballs and gets clicks and gets likes and all that kind of stuff because of how caustic and jarring it can be. And it's hard to combat the misinformation authors, the bad actors out there.
Is the future of software testing in the hands of artificial intelligence, or is there something more we should be focusing on? Welcome to Care to Lead podcast. I'm your host, Cynthia Corsetti. Today, we're joined by Noel Wurst, Director of Storytelling at SmartBear. It's a company known for its cutting-edge software testing tools and solutions. Noel is here to share how AI is not just disrupting, but also enhancing the industry in unexpected ways. Noel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while.
So let's start with a key point from your article. You talk about the role of AI in improving efficiency and accuracy of software testing. Can you explain how it's currently being used in this space and what impact it's having?
So we're all just kind of figuring it out, which is both exciting and daunting, depending on kind of where you're at and your level of acceptance of this technology or understanding of it. We'll kind of talk about that a little bit more in a bit. But we're all just kind of ideally open to the idea that these tools may be able to play some sort of greater role in our work, a positive role in our work, not to replace our value as humans. Certainly in software testing whatsoever, there's still absolutely a major need for human involvement with these tools. We are by no means just shipping off all the work to them. So, I mean, my favorite ways are anything that someone discovers on that very first day and thinks, I got to share this with other people. Because when people ask me what my own favorite use cases are, what's been the most impressive, thing, or what do I love doing with these tools, every one of those things is something that I learned by seeing someone else who had done that. I haven't come up with anything original to do with these tools. And so the more people are online going, hey, look what I just realized you could do with this, the better. So there's still this unknown number of ways we'll be using these tools in our work. And the quicker we can get to understanding them better is by more folks not hoarding, those wins, those efficiency gains to themselves, but making sure the rest of us are aware of those as well.
Okay, I love that. I was on a call earlier, a podcast episode earlier, and the gentleman was talking about AI, and he made a comment that it's kind of still in its infancy, and because he was trying to give people confidence that it's not going to take your job. And he said, it's actually about as smart as a 5-year-old, which made me feel really stupid because I put something into AI and it comes back with something that's light years better than I could have come up with on my own. So if it's only a 5-year-old, I'm in trouble. But it's sometimes really good.
Sometimes that's the case. I mean, so there's been this shift, this shift just started. I mean, I just became aware of it last week, where one of the things that I heard as I was learning more about generative AI tools was to think of them as this intern with boundless energy that can work, 24/7, 365, knows nothing about the work they're doing. You need to provide all that context to them. They're the intern. And once you give them all the right context and the amount of information to do their job well, they're going to do it really, really well. I just last week saw someone just completely throw that out and say that you should flip it and you should think of yourself as the intern. And I was just like, what? It was completely not against everything that I thought. It was just another new way of thinking about it, and think of them as the expert and you as a way to learn from them. Spend more time asking it questions and learning from its responses, knowing that they're not always going to be right, but spend more time asking them questions like you're the intern and treat them like the person you're interning for. And I was like, I've never even begun to think about using those tools that way. And it's now on this to-do list of mine, which hopefully I'll get to, because yet again, I would have never thought about turning the script. Because for me, that whole intern analogy worked really, really well the other way around. How well will it work for me if I flip the script and pretend I'm the one that doesn't know anything? Who knows? Maybe y'all think it's a terrible idea. But this person was just saying it was blowing his mind at treating it that way. So I totally get it.
I actually like that. It's almost a tool to develop our critical thinking skills.
Yes, 100%, which are more in demand right now than I think anything. I was thinking earlier about the earlier interview, and as far as what skills do we need? At first when these tools came out, it was, oh, you're going to have to become a prompt engineer and you're going to need to take these courses and you're going to need to get this certification and all this stuff. I think it's the ability to think critically about, well, not just in this one way, but just to give one example, the quality of the answer or the work that you just got back from it. If you ask it something that you know a lot about, you just need something to be created much more quickly than you can create it. Let's say it's a subject that you know everything about. You just can't write a 2,000 word blog anywhere near as fast as this tool can. You can get that blog back and look at it and go, yep, this is all true. This is all true. Okay, that's actually I can update this a little bit, but yep, got it. You can verify all that. These tools can also perform work about stuff you know nothing about. But how will you determine the quality of that work? Like if I ask it about a subject that I know nothing about, I may be, as an English major and a writer and a storyteller, be able to read that story and go, I mean, this sounds great. I couldn't tell you if one sentence of it is true. Mm-hmm. We're not always going to have someone who we can then go give that story to and be like, tell me if all this is true. So like, how will you figure that out? Like, how will you determine that? Sometimes you can ask AI to like prove itself. Sometimes it just wants to please you and makes you think it's all correct. So critical thinking about how we interact with these tools, how we interpret the work we get back from them, how we handle errors, all those kinds of things. Critical thinking is not leaving because of the advancements of AI by any means. I think it's only become more important.
Yeah, I've noticed in AI, there have been times when it come back with a quote of something, and I would just go back and ask. I would say, like, where is this quote located? And it would say, oh, I just kind of made that up. I was just, this would be a good quote someone could have made. And I'm like, yeah, no, if we're going to use quotes, I need real quotes.
It's going to come across like you and I planned this as like a plant for this interview. But one project that I recently did was we have a bunch of case studies that are kind of done in this previous format, some older branding. We wanted to update them to the newer branding. Certainly something anyone here is capable of, but a very easily automated task from something like ChatGPT to get those back. Those case studies all included customer quotes. And so I would say, as explicitly as I could, when you rewrite these, when you reformat these to this format, do not touch the customer quote. Leave it exactly as it is, word for word. Not one letter should be changed. And it would come back, I understand the request and I'm not going to touch the customer quote. They were wrong all the time. Like, oh, wow. Everything else would be perfect. And I would come back and, like you just said, I would say, you changed the quote. And it would say, I apologize, I did change the quote. Here it is in its original format. And that wouldn't be the original format. And so again, you have to stop and go, okay, what's going on? What can I actually fix? And what can I get this thing to start doing correctly? What do I just need to make sure I spot, where it hasn't done something correctly? And if I'm going to go advocate the use of this tool to other people on my team, I have to make sure they know about this shortcoming because I don't want them to go assume that it did what it said just because it said it did it.
It's interesting because AI can, and I'll just speak for myself, because it can make you undervalue your own skill set. I recently published a book. It's called Dark Drivers. And in the process of writing this book, I was just learning about AI, thinking, oh, this is so cool. This can help me with my research. Well, first I found it really can't help you with research. It can make up research. So I learned that. But what I also found was like, my book is based on a lot of stories of clients. And it was all like, they dictated to me, voice memo, Marco Polo, said all these transcripts. And I would take those transcripts and I would do the best I could trying to write a narrative with it. And then I'd put it into AI and I would say, can you make this better? Can you make this sound more, impactful than I did? And 100% of the time it would come back correctly. And I would say, it would come back better than what I did. And then I would say, like, don't touch the research and don't touch the quotes. And again, you'd have to go back and check all of that. But it did such a good job of taking my words and making them better that I started to have doubt in my own ability to write anything. So now if it's like an email, I go, all right, I'm putting this in AI. Can you make this better? Improve the writing. And I've been doing blogs and doing writing since forever. And now I have less confidence. And that's not necessarily a good thing either, especially when you're publishing a book.
Exactly. I totally agree. I'm the same way, and you see it just in something as simple as when you go to Twitter, when a social media platform goes down, let's say Instagram goes down, you can go to Twitter and find all the funny memes of Instagram's down and everyone running around on fire and freaking out and that kind of stuff. Now it's when, something like ChatGPT goes down and all of the, jokes about not remembering how to do your job. What am I supposed to do? Write this email myself? What am I supposed to do? Handwrite this blog kind of thing? We're all kind of laughing. I'm not saying we're laughing at this horrifying situation, but We're all making light of the fact that there's some honesty in that. It's like you've gained some new skills. Some others probably go away a little bit. I mean, but you can equate that to, I don't mean to sound like I'm minimizing it, but like you can equate that to anything. It could be a way you used to cook something by hand or stir something by hand, and now you use a KitchenAid mixer, or you used to do this thing manually, and then now that's completely able to be done automated. We have learned ways to hand off work to computers, to machines for our entire lives, no matter what era you were born in. This is something new. Like, this is something that we never really thought about being able to automate. The creation of artistic work or of words, of copy, of interviews, things like that, where we haven't had the ability to do that before. And so to do that initially feels scary. I mean, people used to not want to use a microwave. I mean, people used to not want to have a TV in their home. People used to not want to order things online. I mean, we've crossed these bridges throughout our lifetimes. Again, no matter how old we are, like we've crossed these bridges of, I don't know, I've never done this. I think about driverless cars. I mean, as much as I'm into technology, I have yet to go into a driverless car. I know friends who have done it and say it's awesome. I'm not there yet. Like, I'm not ready to hand that over yet. Not because I'm the greatest driver in the world. It's just this level of comfort and familiarity that, like, no one's been able to, like, get me to that new level. My kids can't wait to do it. And they're like, you've had the ability to get in a driverless car and didn't do it before? I'm like, yes. They're like, are you crazy? And I'm just like, wow, like, look at what they're already ready to hand off. But then I go, wait, they've never driven. They don't have the familiarity of 30 years of driving, that kind of thing. And so it's scary. It's all very scary. It's not all exciting. It's not all the best. There's a balance there of our level of comfort with these tools.
Well, not to mention, like, who do you yell at if you're a passenger at the driverless car?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Myself for getting in one. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at right now.
I'm always like, slow down. You're too close to the, like, who do you backseat driver for? So another thing that I found when I'm working with leaders of organizations, right? They're struggling with issues in their, like, so maybe they hire someone that says, okay, we have to be careful how we use AI because we have privacy issues. We're throwing company secrets into there so that we can get AI to help us tweak it and, tweak our writing. And the privacy people are like struggling with, what's okay and what's not okay. What's an invasion of privacy and how much are we at risk of putting our trade secrets out into the world inadvertently with our employees? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, again, it's still so new, where I think our company here at SmartBear does a really good job of training our employees and making sure they have access, to the tools and functionalities that they need, not to what they don't or which would cause problems. The access we have to different tools, it varies by team. Like, some have access to Microsoft Copilot and others have access to ChatGPT, and sometimes they don't have access to the other one because they don't really need it, and things like that, just from a cost standpoint of the number of licenses, but also making sure once you grant that access, you then grant access to the training on how to use the tools effectively, but also the training of knowing what to enter into them and what not to enter them. But there's still that hope that people are actually using them the right way after it's kind of like sending a kid off to school kind of thing. It's like you've trained them the best you can. They've told you that they understand, that they know the rules, they know how to be a good student, a good user of these tools. And then you just hope that they don't get convinced otherwise to do that, because the policing of what gets entered into them and what doesn't, that's hard. I mean, I'm not saying the allure is there for me personally of like, oh, if I could only enter this private customer data into this thing, I would get my answers back so much better. But there are use cases where sometimes that could be the case, where someone is like, well, I think because this is an enterprise account, I think it's actually okay if I put this in. That allure is there of giving them more information. Or maybe your plan with whatever tool you has tells you that the information won't be used to train those tools and will be kept private. And then there could still be a data breach. So that's one of those, I think InfoSec, secure IT companies are coming up with not just policies, but how do we follow up and make sure that people are adhering to those, that understand why they're important, why they're in place, that so that they can feel more comforted that the tools are being used in the right way. Because right now, I would imagine there's a bit of uneasiness and every day praying someone's not using these tools in your org in a way that they shouldn't be, have told not to, and have said they won't. That there's got to still be some uneasiness there at night of, oh, please don't let us, don't let me find out that people are putting things into these tools that they know they shouldn't, or I at least thought they knew they shouldn't.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe they even are doing it inadvertently. They're not doing it exactly the way they're told not to, but they're doing it in a different way, that they're just not making that connection, that it's the same thing.
Totally.
Let me ask you a question, Noel. What's your biggest fear in the world of AI?
I think, let's see, because it can change, each time a new tool comes out, a new functionality comes out, it can change. Right now for me personally, I guess today, maybe I should stamp this with a today, this was the fear, it could be different tomorrow. Just misinformation about, what they can do, what they should do, what they're capable of and what they're not capable of. Everyone, I think, likes to be so definitive today. There's not a lot of comfort for, let's just say, organizations to say anything about uncertainty. You want to be certain that we're going to hit this sales number, or you want to be certain that all the employees, are going to follow the rules, whatever the case is. With AI, there's so much uncertainty, and there's so much opportunity to be misinformed or underinformed about the safe way to use these tools, what they're capable of and what they're not. You may find some flashy video on YouTube far more convincing than your IT's DocuSign that you had to sign that was 40 pages long that you just whipped to the bottom and signed to move on, that kind of thing. There's so much misinformation about what these tools are going to do, what they're never going to do, so you don't need to worry. We don't know what they're never going to do. We don't know what they're definitely going to do. It is just so unknown that there's a real opportunity to be misinformed, to be given fear about things that you shouldn't fear, to be given fear about things that maybe you should. And so you make these judgments of, I'm never going to touch it because I've got this legitimate fear. And so people are just very quick to make decisions on, yes, I trust this. Yes, I don't. I'm going to allow for this. I'm not going to allow for this. I see it all the time. One interesting case that I had recently was I was invited to give a AI 101 at one of my children's school, a session for the parents and a session for the teachers. And there had been so much misinformation separately between both of those groups of, I thought it could do so-and-so, or I thought it wasn't able to do so-and-so, or I thought it was too dangerous to do so-and-so. I don't blame or fault anyone for coming across that misinformation. It's everywhere. And so I guess to summarize, my biggest fear would just be that we don't know where the best sources of information are. Even today's best sources could be so woefully out of date tomorrow. We know there are lots of sources of misinformation out there because misinformation gets eyeballs and gets clicks and gets likes and all that kind of stuff because of how kind of caustic and jarring it can be. And it's hard to combat the misinformation authors, the bad actors out there.
So that kind of, it answers that question kind of professionally, but I think it also touches into in a personal realm too, what your biggest fear is. And it sounds, if I'm hearing you correctly, misinformation is just a big fear personally and professionally of what's out there?
Very much so. Very much so. And so I try to give my kids, again, what I believe is the right information. I don't tend to speak in absolutes of this is definitely going to be the case forever. And once you learn this, you're good to go. Because again, I tell them tomorrow it could be totally different. But yeah, there's a lot of legitimate fears that are out there. And you can come across as this Luddite for having legitimate fears about this fear about your job from someone else who thinks it's crazy to think that way, but who then offers no way for you to maybe think differently. At the same time, the super enthusiasts out there who legitimately are super enthusiastic about it can be a little deaf to hearing anything against that. They can be a little hard to convince that there's some pumping of the brakes that should maybe be done. And so there is a personal fear. We're going to hear a lot about it during this election. We've already heard accusations of using AI in campaigning that were false, and just blatant, I'm going to use AI to create this, and I'm just going to play naive if someone accuses me of not knowing, that kind of thing. And so it's just all so new. It's just there is so much of it being used when we know and when we don't know. And then you have to stop and think, well, even though I know this is AI, how many people don't? How many people don't know that this didn't actually happen? To me, it's funny. Here's this image of, just pick your celebrity in this ridiculous, setting that they didn't actually do. How many people will see that image and immediately rush to share it because it is the truth, and there's no chance of even reaching those people and letting them know that it wasn't actually real? That's where it starts to get a little scary. As these tools get more capable of great things, they just get more capable of bad things at the exact same space. There's not we're only going to think of the good things to do with these tools. We're not going to think of the bad things. They're always going to be hand in hand.
Noel, tell us a little bit more about the company, SmartBear, and what your goals are, who your clients are, and what your mission is.
Sure. So at SmartBear, we kind of have a motto here. It's on one of our walls in our Somerville location, just outside of Boston. That's our headquarters, and it's quality isn't just a goal; it's the whole point. And so when we talk about that at its surface level, we're talking about software quality, meaning like we don't hope our software is of a high quality. Like it has to be. Quality is not just a goal. It's not something that we hope happens. It's something that we strive for each and every day. The quality of our own software and the quality of the software that our customers are using our tools to help them build. And so we are an organization with software development and testing and design and documentation and governance tools all across what we call the software development lifecycle. So you might be involved in creating software at this very first ideation stage, or you may be involved at this other stage of the software is out there, it's in customers' hands, and we're monitoring it to make sure it's still running and not slowing down, and that it's a resilient, robust software. And there's a million stages in between, and we have tools at every single one of those stages so that we're not just looking at, well, these are the people who control the quality over here. No, it's these people over here because they're the ones who do the testing. Well, these are the people who fix the bugs that the testers test. We don't care where you are in the SDLC, as we call it. There's a tool at every stage so that you can ideally contribute to software quality in a positive way because everyone has a role to play in that.
Who's an ideal client for SmartBear?
People who care about the quality of their software and understand the role that quality plays. I mean, we make decisions so quickly, oftentimes based on the quality of software. I mean, we look at like a mobile app sometimes, and let's say you hear this mobile app is great, and so you download it and you can't get logged in because it's giving you trouble at the login stage. You may determine right at that very instant, never mind, I give up, and just not even try. And there's this wealth of like the rest of that application that you never even got to see. But because that stage at the very beginning was so painful, that's enough for you to be like, no, I'm good. I'll go find something else. So an ideal customer would be someone who understands the role that software quality plays in customer satisfaction and customer retention and security and in app stability and in performance and all the things that we increasingly expect and demand software to do. Because, as I'm sure you've seen, you can't get logged in, or you're locked out, or there's some sort of error, or you can't complete your purchase, or whatever it is. You rush to the internet to make it known that app has disappointed you and has let you down. And so you understand how important quality is. I'll just say lastly, there used to be this debate of speed versus quality. And that if you want the thing delivered really, really fast, you're going to have to make some kind of like cuts to your quality because quality takes a long time to build out. And people made that decision. It's like, well, we just need to get something out the door and we'll fix it later. That's not good enough. Sometimes customers don't give you the chance to fix it later. You let them down one time and there's a million other yous out there offering them a competing product that looks awfully similar that claims that their product doesn't do that thing. You can go to them really quickly. It's never been easier to switch to a competitor. And so for us, the ideal customer is someone who understands just how important quality is and that it doesn't have to cost speed to get it.
And how about size of organizations? Can you be a small,
totally
solopreneur who has a program is designing or an app or something, or does it have to be a big industry, a big company?
We have open source we have open source and commercial products. We have products that are used by teams of one. We have customers in the Fortune 500 who are using this by the thousands. There's no you need to be this tier for us to pay any attention to you. We have plenty of single users of our open source and commercial, all the way up to the world's leading financial institutions, major customers as well. There's no ideal in terms of size.
You're in an industry obviously that changes constantly. So as a leader, what do you do to keep your teams inspired and motivated to always be trying to stay ahead of the curve? Because that's a challenge.
It is. That's a good question. I mean, I would say that if you've worked in the tech industry before, change is a given. So I guess that's a bonus where to come here and see how quickly things can change wouldn't be unfamiliar to you if you've worked in any other software or tech organization. There is no we just need to get to this point where we can put it on cruise control. That's not even a myth. No one would believe that that's the case. So to be able to understand that change is not just necessary, but also a good thing. The changes that we encounter are usually changes in something that's going to make something a more efficient process, or it's a feature or a capability we didn't have before that now we do. Maybe it's through an acquisition of a company. Maybe it's through a new product we developed. There is something new here every single day. All the changes are intended to make our products better, to make our team stronger, to give us a greater understanding of our customers' needs, the personas we're trying to reach. So the changes aren't like, oh, great, I can't believe we have to change this. It's, oh, great, I now have a new way to frame this, to pitch this, to sell this, to train someone on it, to support this product. Each of our teams would have the ability to change in really beneficial ways.
What would you consider to be your biggest leadership challenge? And it doesn't have to be from right now in this role. It could be like in your career. What's the biggest challenge you faced?
Good question. I mean, I don't want to say like time of day, because that could be a challenge in any organization. I think, maybe it's related to time of day. Maybe it would be dishonest to not say time of day. Just knowing that everyone's needs are different, that everyone's needs are, and not just different as in like the need itself is different, but like the urgency of that need. Understanding when someone has a need to move into a different role, for a promotion that they're striving for a performance review score, whatever it is, for need for time off, need for time away, a mental health day, whatever it is, that like it takes you caring. Hopefully that's not a hard thing for you to do as a leader, caring to understand the importance of that need of that employee. Not just, that's not a need of mine, I don't know why you would have that need, so I can't prioritize that need, but just taking a moment to understand why that need is so pressing for them. And it doesn't mean having to ask them for like private information they're not comfortable of sharing, but just taking a moment to understand that it's not just as simple as this request came through and I don't like it or understand it, so denied. Or this person needs this time off, this person is trying to achieve this new role, this person is struggling with this other team member, whatever it is. And understanding like you are the leader who has the ability to help make that change happen. And so it's not just not prioritizing your own needs, it's just really focused on prioritizing the needs of others, because their work is what's going to make your work possible. And it just goes on and so on and so on. And you then have the opportunity to instill that kind of kindness and compassion in them, where I've heard sometimes before someone who reported to me say, I hate that this is going to sound so much like bragging, but I remember one time where someone said, I haven't had another boss like you since I left. And I was just like, oh, what a shame. Like, I don't mean because I'm the world's greatest boss. I just mean like you got this boss at one time and it could have been another person, that was so great. That person was probably just a decent human being. Like to care about someone else's needs shouldn't be something you have to learn to do. That should just be something you are just so interested in doing. And you hope that everyone has that same experience, because a bad experience with a bad manager, it really does like scar you for life in some ways. And that I sit around sometimes and discuss a bad boss from the past from 10, 15 years ago. And someone will be like, I can't believe y'all are still chatting about that person. And it's like, then you never had the experience that we did, or you would be joining us. It's great that you didn't. We're not saying you should have had a terrible experience too, but just understanding the potential positive and negative impacts that your work can have, that your personality can have, that your whole being can kind of have, like that's an important thing to not lose sight of.
So obviously, as an executive coach, I deal with C-suite executives every day. And I can hear just in your voice and in your words that you're definitely a skilled leader and you have a lot of great ideas and a lot of energy and a lot of passion. And that's wonderful. I'm also a believer that we learn to be leaders and we learn the most often by our mistakes. So if I were to ask you, is there a mistake or something that you could point to that really changed and shaped the way you lead today?
I think believing that I wasn't cut out for it. It's really, really hard to be a good manager, boss, whatever. You have, again, you've got a million different priorities depending on the size of your team. I've never been a manager of a team of 10, 20, 30, 40 people. I have no idea how you do that. But again, I should probably stop and go, you learn it. Like you learn how to do it. You speak to other people who've done it. Like, don't believe like I've only ever managed one person. And if I had to manage two, I would not be able to take that on. You probably could if you believed that you were capable of it, if you took the time or had the time to learn from some others. So I have definitely talked myself out of management and leadership opportunities in the past because I didn't believe I was capable of it. Not of caring, not of having, compassion for someone on my team or someone underneath me reported to me, something like that, but simply believing that I was too burdened. I was too unfocused. I was too whatever, where I talked myself out of opportunities to take on a bigger management role. Where now, not that I've lost that opportunity, but I am more willing to hear out my own manager's suggestions of what if you took a bigger role here. I don't immediately panic and go, no, I'm good. Please don't. I won't be able to do that. So getting over that self-doubt, if there's imposter syndrome, I've certainly dealt with that as well. You can certainly look at other managers and go, they're so much better. I'll never get to that point. So I just won't even try to get anywhere near it. Like just knowing that if you've ever managed one person really well, if you've ever made a positive impact on one person, you are absolutely capable of making that impact on additional people. And you should, I don't just mean like, figure it out. I mean, like, you should, though. You should figure out a way to do it, because the impacts that has and then just spreads to more and more people, it's too good of an opportunity to pass up and think that you're not capable of.
And there's great executive coaches out there to help you.
Right, exactly. I can tell from you, and like again, I'll return the compliment and say, like, this is the first time we've sat down and chatted together, and I'm a little curious as to kind of what your strategies are and skills and things like that, because again, it's like executives, I've heard from executive coaches that I've spoken to that they kind of quickly tend to see, wow, I have opportunities for all sorts of change. Maybe they came into it not defiant, but came into it not knowing what they would do differently. And it starts to make sense to them really quickly, because they do understand the amount of responsibility they have to their organization or the size of their team or the rest of the C-suite, whatever the role is. They may be clueless coming in what they could possibly do to be better, but they start to see it really quickly, and that probably excites them, I would imagine.
I think what's interesting is I started this business in 2011 when I left my executive role. And back then, when you talk about executive coaching, people would think of it as remedial. People would think of it as I have something to fix. Well, today, like the clients that reach out to me are like already on top, and they're like, Cynthia, like, I want to go further. I want to do more. I want a bigger platform. I want to do this better. I want to help more people. And it's like, they know they're good. They just want to get better. And that is so much more exciting and so much more fun than coaching this person who's going, my boss said I have to be here. And it's totally different. No, you can help both, but one is just so much more exciting to work with.
I'm sure.
So, Noel, I would like to ask you if there's something about yourself that people would be kind of surprised to hear here.
Oh, I love on the spot questions, because they do tend to get the most honest answers. So stuff just being thrown at you, none of this was prepared. I think that I would have to say that I am actually incredibly uncomfortable when I am speaking in like a setting like this, or on stage, giving any kind of training, that kind of thing. But it's a place that I still want to be. And so when I say uncomfortable, I mean, like, I want it to go so well. Like, I want to not get off track and go on some tangent or like overshare. I'm constantly afraid of like oversharing, because I will do that in a heartbeat. But I want it to go so well. I want it to be worth the people's time in the room, in the audience, whatever the case may be, that I'm like a nervous wreck the whole time. But it's because of that amount that I care for that audience. It really is. And so I'm a big baseball fan. And I use, yet again, that wasn't my initial idea. That wasn't something I came up with. But there's a pitcher for the Atlanta Braves, my favorite team. And this guy was asking him what his pregame meal is before he goes out and pitches. And he was like, oh, I don't eat the entire day until the game is over. I could never. And he's like, what do you mean? And he was like, oh, I would be sick the second I ate. Like, I'm a nervous wreck. And this is like an all-star potential future Hall of Fame pitcher. The guy was like, you get nervous? And he was like, you better get nervous, because if you don't, it means you don't actually care how it goes. It means if it goes poorly, so what? I'll get another opportunity, or I'm just doing this, blah, blah, blah. So it's like those nerves, that uneasiness, that worry, those butterflies, all that stuff can be because you are so hopeful that the work you've put in to prepare for that speech or that training session or whatever it is goes so well that it'll make you sick if it doesn't. Like, it'll make you sick if it doesn't go well. And sometimes it just doesn't, no matter how much work you put into it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it just doesn't go well. And that's okay too. But I think it's odd that this is true, but I tend to look comfortable. Like, when I'm speaking and when I'm presenting, and afterwards I'll tell someone how I had to like run back to my hotel room and just like black out and just like leave the room and get away from people and stuff. They're like, are you serious? Like, but you're so, like at ease up there. And I'm like, that's not true. Like it should look that way. It should come across that way, but I'm not. I find it very nerve-wracking and anxiety and everything else, but purely only because I just want it to go well. And I want the audience, the crowd, the listeners, whatever, to have really enjoyed they were a part of that.
I think when you enjoy what you're doing, like my colleague Jacqueline and I, that we co-facilitate a lot, and we really enjoy what we're doing. But for every hour that we're in front of someone, we've got 2.5 hours of prep, right? So you're really prepared and you're doing it. And the same thing with coaching. You get really good at what you're doing. And we did a facilitation recently, and we did a role play. We're trying to teach leaders how to coach, because it drives me nuts, actually. I hear leaders all the same. Well, I coached them through that. I'm like, no, you didn't. You mentored them, you counseled them, but coaching is a skill on its own. So we were teaching coaching skills, and someone that I had been coaching for a very long time was going to do this role play with another colleague. And she got up in front of the room, and we gave her the scenario, and she had to coach this person through it. And she had been through like 7 years of coaching sessions with me. Like 7 years she's been a client. So she got up here and she was like, she froze. She's like, I could not believe that I could not think of one question to ask. And it looked so easy, and I thought I could do it so easily. And I think that's what it is. You do put a lot of effort into it, and you make it look easy, and you make it look joyful. And it is joyful, but you just make it look so enjoyable. They don't see all the work and all the butterflies and all the stress that's behind the scenes. So I get that.
Totally, 100%. There was I laughed one time. Someone asked if I could help out and present some maybe like a webinar or something like that, and it was on a topic that I knew nothing about. Like it was like a capability of one of our tools, and I was like, I mean, I can get up there and moderate. I mean, I could welcome everyone, tell them where the Q&A or where the Q&A and chat buttons were on their Zoom, but I can't banter back and forth with this person about this topic. And they were like, oh, come on, you can get up there and talk about anything. And I was like, that's not what I do at all. Like, I only talk about stuff that I'm passionate about, stuff that I've studied up on and like prepped for to death. None of it's winging it. None of it's just like, yeah, give me a topic and I could talk. It's like, I mean, maybe I can talk a long time. It doesn't mean that anything that I'm saying is impactful. But again, I do think I'm good at stepping back and going, why do they think that? They think that because you've made it look easy. Maybe it's my ADHD or whatever it is, but I do have a great interest in a number of topics. So maybe I gave the impression I can talk about anything because of the number of topics that I've covered. But I would say the number of things I can talk about is actually very small. It's fairly limited to me. But if someone has only seen me do 5 different sessions on 5 different topics, maybe they go, wow, they can talk about anything. So it's cool to give that impression. But at the same time, like, be honest with people when they ask you to do something that requires you to do something that you know you're not great at. Like, be honest. Don't just go, oh, I got to live up to this expectation, because you won't. Like, you'll get up and fail miserably, and at the sake of trying to be a people pleaser, where in the long run, they're going to be like, what happened? You bombed that. And it's like, well, I didn't know anything about that, but I didn't want to tell you no. Like, don't do that. Be a people pleaser by finding the ideal person for that speaking opportunity or that coaching opportunity if it's not you. Because again, your goal is that it's worthwhile for the audience. And if you're not going to be the reason for that, find the person who will.
Yeah, I had doing AI, this series on AI, I've had a lot of really brilliant people that have done articles for me in Authority. And we've done these podcasts. And there have been a couple of them that were just light years above. Like, I would ask a question, they would give an answer, and I had absolutely no idea what they just said because it was so far from my head.
Right.
So I didn't even know how to ask a follow-up question. So I would try to shift it back into leadership, which is my comfort zone. But it can be really uncomfortable when you don't know a topic. Like, I don't know AI. Like, I know a lot about it just because I've interviewed a lot of people about it. But these guys are just like PhD and news. I can't even say what they are. I can't even say what they did. Right. So they're just really great people. And it is uncomfortable and awkward sometimes.
Yeah, I love bringing along like technical muscle with me for that sort of thing. Because again, like, I learn who the audience is and what their expectations of me are, what their hopes for the amount of like technical content, for instance, that'll be there. And so we do a lot of like these lunch and learn, quality summit, quality guild type things here at SmartBear, where we go into a customer and we present virtually or in person. And we spend a lot of time finding out who's going to be in the room. Do they just want us to go straight into a demo of the product, or do they want more of a picture painted of, the state of the industry and what we're hearing and what we're trying to prepare for, make people aware of. It's all over the map. And so we do a good bit of time chatting with the customer ahead of time, trying to figure that out, because it's funny sometimes, kind of like that you can get up and talk about anything thing. Sometimes I think they think they're being helpful, and I'm not about to talk bad about them, but they think they're being helpful of, oh, y'all can just get up and talk about whatever you want. It's like, we don't want to do that. We want to come in and talk about whatever you want, whatever's going to be most helpful to you. And so sometimes, when we have these calls and I start to learn, for instance, that it's going to be a room full of developers and they need about 1 minute of who SmartBear is and the state of the industry. And then they want to go right into like technical documentation. I know my involvement's going to be very small. Like I know that like it's going to involve much more my counterpart. I've got a dog here in the background. I know it's going to involve my counterpart a lot more than me, and that's fine. The last thing I want to do is try and pretend like I can speak at their level. When I can hand it off to someone who is at their level, they're so thankful that I did, and they're thanking me for doing such a great job. And I'm like, you mean immediately kicking it over to my developer friend? You're welcome. Thank you for letting me know that's what you wanted.
That's great. So as a final question, anyone who has ever listened to my podcast, they know that Care to Lead is my signature leadership system, and it's built on a foundation of 4 pillars: clarity, authenticity, responsibility, and engagement. And I always ask a guest a closing questions about one of these pillars. And today I'd like to ask you about engagement. In your opinion, how does engagement play a role in your leadership with SmartBear?
Oh, that's great. Those are 4 great pillars, by the way. Those are all, each one of those, I wasn't kind of like, that one's, those are all 4, just killer. So I gave a talk maybe about a year ago around the difference between engagement and resonance. And it was around the fact that you need the engagement. Like you need to come across as engaging and trustworthy and worth that person's time and at the level of like friendliness or professionalism that they're looking for, that kind of thing. But then you very quickly need to resonate as well, because you can find something, you can find an ad, or you can find a spammy email engaging enough to click on it and then immediately wish you had it. You can find a promotion for a session at a conference really engaging and then sit down and go, I wonder how I walk out of here without, like getting the shame of, the walk of shame out of here because this is not for me. And so it's not that resonance is more important than engagement. It's just that very next step. Like you definitely need to be engaging. You definitely need to have this engaging, like, I want to hear what this person has to say. But then what you say or what that person is saying needs to resonate with you. And that comes, again, from taking the time to understand your audience well. And if it's from a leadership position, your audience may be that one direct report you have. If you are out there as this evangelist, public speaking, your audience may be 500 or 1,000 people. Like, who are they? Like, what are their roles? Why did they come to that session? What are they looking to learn from it? Are you there to set the stage for the rest of the day where you're going to be part of the determining factor of how well that day went? Or is this something different? There's lots of things you can do to understand that audience better, that when you get up there to speak in front of them or to present their performance review, whatever it is, that you have at least a little confidence of, I've got a pretty good idea of who these people are and what they will leave here happy or happier or glad that they heard me say, informed, whatever the goal is. So engagement is key. You can't spend all your time on how much what you're going to say is going to resonate if that very first stage of engagement, they see you and go, I don't like the looks of that person. Mm-hmm. You've just spent all that time creating something that's going to resonate really well with no one that would even, with people who wouldn't give you the time to even be engaging. So it's critically important. And then once you get them, once you get that person in the seat, once you get that person on your Zoom line, once you get that crowd, whatever it is, then it's time to make them really thankful that they followed that engagement. I
want to thank you so much for joining us today, Noel, because I found your conversation to be incredibly resonant and incredibly engaging. And I hope that our listeners do too. So thank you for that. To all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to Care to Lead. And remember, leaders who care to lead. Until next time.